Hello and welcome to LLMix, the Tech Mahindra podcast where leaders from the world's most respected media organizations take us behind the scenes and explain how agentic AI is transforming their organizations. Today we have a very special guest, Kristina Stoitsova from the FT themselves, joining us. Welcome, Kristina.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jay.
It's a pleasure to have you, Kristina. Agentic AI is all the rage right now. So let's just dive straight in. Where is the FT in its journey on agentic AI?
Yes, you are right. Since maybe the beginning of last year, I think the headline of every AI conference or every technology conference would be agents and building agentic systems. I personally feel this is being dialed down a little bit this year with a bit more focus on putting the fundamentals together and a bit more focus on going beyond the hype of what's possible and more into the question of which are the real life use cases where building an agentic system makes sense. So just having that context in mind, I would say the FT is rather early in terms of building agentic systems or using agentic systems at scale within the organization. But I would say at the same time, we are thinking and developing capabilities that can very easily be turned into tools to be used by agents. So I'll expand a little bit on that. First of all, just to make sure we are aligned on terminology, when I think about agents and agentic systems, to me, this is basically the next wave, next evolution of automation systems or building automated systems that has a few important characteristics. One of those is there's a level of intelligence in the orchestration engine, which is usually a large language model that we have not seen before with more traditional automated systems. And then there's a level of autonomy that is also granted to those systems in order to find the best way or the best sequence, the best algorithm for using a number of different tools in order to produce an outcome. So if we look at agents and agentic systems in this context, coming out of this definition, it all boils down to having this intelligent autonomous orchestration engine or brain or LLM, and then having a number of tools and capabilities that it can use in order to achieve certain outputs, which combined lead to the overall outcome. At the FT, we have a number of different use cases where we can apply agents, starting from maybe the most trivial example with productivity tools for FT employees, which is applicable not just for publishing organizations, but for any enterprise out there. And then going a little bit into productivity tools for editors and journalists. So this is one area where I personally can see building agentic systems as a very impactful way to help journalists process vast amounts of potentially unstructured data in order to find newsworthy signal or in order to find interesting trends or in order to be able to interrogate this data in a bit more natural way. This is one area where we could be building agentic systems. We are already, our team is working closely with journalists and editors, and we are already building data science and AI capabilities for them. The next logical step could be to package those capabilities as tools so that an agentic system could utilize those tools. And then another direction which we are thinking about is how user behaviors are changing and how the habits of consuming news and updates and analysis is changing with our subscribers. So we are already seeing some shifts. For example, traditional search seems to be declining. Many people are now consuming news through AI summaries or through news aggregators without necessarily going down to follow the specific article that was the source of the news update. And if we take that trend and if we extrapolate it a little bit or try to think forward what that could mean for the future, we could probably imagine those subscribers using their news agents or agentic systems that help them stay on top of things in a way that's very personalized for them. And then those agentic systems on their end using different publishers, content bases as sources, as tools. So I personally can imagine time when with the appearance of search news agents, we would need to package our content in a way that makes it easy for agents to use it as a tool, similarly to how today or in the past we have been packaging our content as APIs, so that certain third parties or B2B clients could access it in an automated way. That's, I guess, a little bit long answer, but hopefully that gives a little bit of behind the scenes thinking at the FT, even though we are at an early stage of implementation and not necessarily focusing on building agentic systems in production as we speak right now.
So you mentioned, I mean, just to recap, you mentioned two broad use cases. One would be for internal productivity as far as the editorial teams are concerned, and one would be, let's say, more consumer facing to help them in an agentic manner curate news and discover content. What about back office operations from a sales, invoice reconciliation process, or contract management and stuff, which are sort of domain agnostic? But would you say that's like the lowest hanging fruit to kind of use agentic workflows at the FT, for example, or not really?
Yeah, I would say that's maybe one of the first things to come to mind when it comes to bringing automation to the next level, making it a little bit more autonomous, more intelligent. The reason why I didn't focus that much on back office productivity enhancement in my answer is because I don't see that as something which is necessarily specific to the publishing industry or to the media domain. It would be applicable to any company. And the other thought that I have regarding this is it is parts of the technology or some aspects of the technology we need to quite carefully and thoroughly think about. As we know, similarly to how large language models have this decreasing but still existent tendency to hallucinate, to make up stuff, there are some side effects that research is showing with agents as well, which is called agent misalignment. And Anthropic had an interesting article, I think about a month ago, I think back in June, about doing tests and research on agents that are built on top of various of the most famous large language models and finding a tendency for agent misalignment in basically all of them at a different rate. So my take on that would be, yes, definitely there is place to push automation even further. We should execute that with care in a responsible manner and be quite selective in what type of use case we are applying agentic systems to and what guardrails we are putting in place.
Thanks. So, Kristina, as director of data science and AI, how does your team support the rest of the FT? How does it support content teams, the journalists, and other? I think if you could just maybe shed some light on that, that'd be really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Jay, is it okay if I show a bit more schematic presentation on how the team is structured?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay, sounds great. Let me share my screen. So the way the team is, the data science and AI team is structured at the FT is by following a hybrid target operating model. This means that our team has two modes of operation. Part of the team, roughly half of it, is organized in something that we call the hub or a center of excellence. And this is where we are coming up with common ways of working. We are defining the target architecture for development, deployment, running, maintenance of machine learning models. And we are setting a certain standard about how do we select models, how do we make decisions with regards to which AI we should use. And then the other half of the team is structured in what we call the spokes, in a hub and spoke paradigm, or we also call them embedded teams. And those are individual data scientists, ML engineers, ML ops engineers, who are working very closely with product managers, software engineers, user researchers, and our editorial team to focus on a specific part of our business. To provide one example, part of our business model, our subscription business model, is orientated towards enterprise subscribers. So our clients are big consultancy firms, law firms, academic organizations. You would know that, as I believe your company is a subscriber of the FT. Yes. And this is our B2B subscription model. So we have a team, cross-functional team, which we call FT Professional internally at the FT, which focuses on building a roadmap for professional subscribers. And the embedded data science and AI experts are part of that team and focusing entirely on building that roadmap. Having said that, it's not a huge team. We are about 20 people, and those 20 people are all structured in the same structure. Just part of the people are operating in the embedded model, part of them are operating in the COE model. With regards to how the team is being put together, we have three disciplines. So the first one, which is most focused on developing algorithms and models, are the data scientists. We also have machine learning engineers who are focusing more on the standard pipeline for developing, deploying, running, maintaining machine learning models. And then we have ML ops engineers as well, who are more like DevOps for machine learning, and they are focusing more on how we can design and maintain the underlying infrastructure and the tools that we are using so that we can enable ourselves for running models in batch mode, but also running low latency models in real time in order to enable, for example, real-time recommendations. And our team is spread across two locations, part of the teams in London, part of the teams in Sofia. I'm personally based in Sofia.
Excellent. And congratulations, you folks won an award for AI transformation as well. So it'd be great to know how you actually did that. If you could unpack that a little, that'd be great.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We actually won 2 awards, but let me touch on the one that you are referring to first. So we were the winner for the Generative AI Initiative of the Year's award of the British Data Awards. And this was focused on recognizing our AI transformation program. So I want to actually show you a little bit about that with the AI transformation program. This is just a structure which helps us have very organized approach towards adopting and using AI in the newsroom with our employees and for building user-facing features in a responsible way. And what this builds upon is our AI principles and policy. I'm pretty excited because back in November 2022, when the ChatGPT release happened and the genie was left out of the bottle, everyone started thinking about and talking about how they should be applying AI. And I think it's fair to say back then there were many more questions than answers regarding this technology, what it is suitable for, what it means for journalism in general. And the FT was one of the pioneer media organizations that came out with an official statement. Our chief editor, Rua Kawaf, had an open letter in which she explained what the FT approach towards using AI is, which I think put a really solid foundation for us to be then going to the practical level, operational level of how do we implement those principles in practice. What we did was to put this AI transformation program, which builds upon those principles. And the way it helps us is by creating a certain structure, making sure that people coming from different disciplines and different departments are talking to each other, connecting with each other. There are mechanisms to help us keep each other informed about progress and challenges, and also to make sure that any solutions that are discovered in a certain part of the organization are transferable to other parts, and we make sure that we are reusing them. It's also helping us be very organized by having specific goals that we want to achieve and making sure that we don't leave anything uncovered. So there are different...
Sorry, Kristina, if I can just go back to the previous slide. So what metrics would you be tracking to measure success here in transformation, for example? Will it be revenue, productivity, or...
The different aspects of the program have different metrics. So, for example, if we look, those are some of the aspects of the program. One of those, if we take the first one, this is fluency. This is the pillar in the program that covers how do we uplift the skill set of everyone at the FT to be able to use AI in a effective and responsible way. And for fluency, we have certain types of metrics, like what we have defined several different levels of AI fluency, which started more basic level of understanding, which we would probably qualify as literacy rather than fluency, and go all the way up to having a really mature knowledge and understanding and practical experience of using AI tools. So if we think about the fluency aspect, for example, we have specific KPIs around what percentage of the organization, based on some tests that we run internally, qualifies as fluent with AI. And we also have very practical outputs related to this. So there are internal learning and education programs, and we also partner with some of the big providers to make sure that we enable people with the right level of access to materials, training, and guidelines or guidance in this process. When it comes to, for example, applying AI in user-facing features, the KPIs are different. They are more related to things like engagement, lifetime value, or some leading indicators of engagement, for example. So if we are releasing new generative AI enabled article transformation, we would look into things like click-through rates, depth of scroll, so how much of the article content is actually being consumed and stuff like that. Some other aspects of the program are related to how do we monetize or how do we use AI in order to advance the way we use a paywall, for example, or how do we extract the most value of our journalism. Some of them are covering on the ethical and governance and compliance aspects of using AI. And this program makes sure that all of those aspects are covered. People coming from different departments are talking to each other, and we have clear goals and accountability on a quarterly basis about how much progress we make on the program.
Excellent. So, and now could we just dive into, since you mentioned paywalls and stuff, could you dive into some specific AI use cases, maybe ML use cases as well? That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me use another illustration to be able to talk about this more comprehensively. Since last year, we have started a program, which is really a set of multiple projects that help us make sure that we provide the right offer to the right user at the right time, no matter where they are in their subscriber lifecycle. So if we think about the subscriber lifecycle, which is basically this arrow here coming from when a potential subscriber first interacts with the ft.com website. This could be they have come across some FT content through search, social media, or elsewhere, and then goes through potentially becoming a trialist, and then potentially becoming a subscriber after their trial period ends, all the way to their lifespan with the FT as an active subscriber, and potentially even to the place where they could become prone to churn, and what we do in order to save them. So across multiple touch points, there is an opportunity for us to make sure that we don't just show all the users a one-size-fits-all offer, which is static and does not take into consideration their personal circumstances, like, for example, how much content they are consuming, how frequently they are visiting the FT, what type of content is of interest for them, what is their history with the FT in terms of purchasing different subscription levels, etc. So instead of having this one-size-fits-all approach, we are using all of this knowledge that we have on our customers' behavior, content preferences, etc., to make sure that we give them a very personalized offer at every point. And in fact, I mentioned those are different projects. We are using different models as well. If we focus more on the earlier stages of the journey during the acquisition, where basically we are providing to potential subscribers the opportunity to read a certain number of articles for free before showing them the paywall. We are using reinforcement learning as a data science approach there in order to understand how many articles we should show for free before displaying the paywall. That's the first critical decision that we are using the algorithm to, or this data science approach for. And then we are also using it to decide what exactly subscription offer we should be showing them, potentially with what kind of discount as well. At this stage of the funnel, we have huge numbers, huge volumes, because many people through different channels are landing on an FT page. And therefore, reinforcement learning turned to be the right approach from a data science perspective to be able to adapt the offer to what we see as actual behavior. As we move further along the funnel, though, which is after, for example, we the user has already become a trialist and their trial period is about to expire. So they would either need to churn and cancel, or they could take on a subscription and become a subscriber. This is where we are using a different model in order to figure out which offer to show now after trialist experience. And this is more of a supervised learning approach because we have smaller volumes there. However, we have more deeper knowledge or richer knowledge about user behaviors at this stage. And it's a really interesting data science and AI problem as well, because obviously each option has its pros and cons. So when we think about the supervised learning approach, where we use historical data to try to predict the future, there's always the risk of doing or repeating history, basically. So we are actually amending this process or this approach, the supervised learning approach, with some trials so that we can embed this fresh element or fresh discovery and add exploration on top of exploitation, which is in the core of the supervised learning approach.
And also, if you just digress a little bit into the build versus buy debate. So here, how much of this has been maybe out, like off-the-shelf stuff, or more, what percentage of it have you kind of built in-house?
That's a really good question. Well, it's a mixture. We have gone through pretty deep process in order to understand what's the most appropriate for each of those. In the first case, in the acquisition stage, we have opted in for a more off-the-shelf solution where we are working with a third party that's providing a ready product and with a certain level of customization of that product. And we have chosen this because, as I said, we have high volumes, really scarce information about the user, and the approach that this company was providing really makes sense at this point. However, in the engagement or retention phase, we have chosen a different way of doing things. We have chosen to use a tailor-made custom modeling, which is working entirely in the FT infrastructure and is owned by our internal data science and AI team. However, we are still partnering with a third party there, just in a different way. So that third party team is acting as an extension of our internal team, and they are contributing to the intellectual property which is being created in a way that enables us to evolve it or tweak it or change it in the future as our needs evolve. So I guess to summarize, we are using the best approach for the specific use case that we have, which almost certainly involves some partnership, but it can be done in a very different way.
Thanks. And any other use cases that you'd like to talk about before we dive into the three cool pieces of tech that you've seen, or are you kind of?
Well, I think that next best offer example that we just looked at, it's an example of the more, I would say, traditional or non-generative data science and AI techniques, which are closer to building recommendation engines, which use some kind of predictive analysis or predictive metrics in our case. Maybe it's worth touching on some generative AI
Sure.
related examples as well. So what I would like to talk about is a feature, is the first generative AI enabled feature that we have released, which is called AskFT. In fact, if you don't mind, maybe I can do a real-time demo of that.
Yes,
Would that be okay?
absolutely.
Okay. So let me switch and share a different tab. This is the Ask FT feature. As you can see, it's part of our FT Professional offering. And what this is a way to interrogate in natural language the FT content, more specifically 2 decades or 20 years of FT journalism. So I can ask a question directly to Ask FT. which I guess I've just chosen an example here, which is a popular topic nowadays. And let's say I would like to understand the intent and the current status of Trump's tariff policy. So as you can see, there's an option to also search back. But let's say in this case, I feel the answer is probably could be built based on recent years. So when I press the Ask FT button, it first looks into the query, then it builds vector representation of that question, then it figures out what is a relevant time horizon, what's the time span that is relevant to this question, searches through articles from within that time period, and finds the most appropriate paragraphs from the articles that contain content which is related to the query. The way this is being done behind the scenes is through using semantic search or vector search. And once it comes up with a list of such articles, you can see the list in the sources here. Basically, it builds a summary of the fragments of those articles that are relevant to the query and generates this one-pager response, which talks about what the tariff, like in summary, what the tariff policy is about, chronologically, how things went, and then providing some critical analysis of the different ways to think about this tariff policy. And this is how AskFT works.
Yeah, and could you unpack the backend tech a little bit? Like what vector databases do you use, and is it a simple RAG implementation here? What large language models are being used here?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me start with large language model selection here. The specific model that we are using is, we like to think about it more as an implementation detail, because this is also changing over time as different vendors are releasing newer, more powerful, or maybe smaller and faster models. We have designed the system so that we have the ability to change the provider. In this case, the features currently working with Anthropic's, one of Anthropic's latest Claude models, and we are using that model not directly from Anthropic, but through AWS Bedrock as a middle layer. There are multiple reasons why we chose to use a middle layer. I'll just mention some of the bigger ones. We are a big AWS customer, so we have enterprise agreements around data usage, and this creates an additional level of security and data protection when it comes to like running such a critical piece related to our content on top of. Also, Bedrock enables much greater control over which regions the model runs in, and much more granular administration of some scalability aspects. So tuning what resources the model is using, and being able to control the latency, which is impacting the user experience quite a lot. So that's in terms of the large language model. It's a pretty sophisticated retrieval augmented generation based solution, where we have put a lot of focus on guardrails, and especially in earlier versions of this feature, when LLMs in general had an even bigger tendency to hallucinate, or it was easier, let's say, to trick an LLM to respond to topics that are not necessarily appropriate to be discussed. So we have done quite a lot in terms of making sure that it is only based on FT content, limiting hallucinations as much as possible. We have done a lot of fine-tuning on how exactly it finds the relevant paragraphs into the articles. We are using re-ranking after we have discovered the relevant paragraph, so that we can start with the most relevant content first. And then we have a lot of like system prompt level and prompt engineering ways to tell the model if it's a sensitive topic, don't reply. If there is too little information in the FT content, so this is maybe a topic that is a little bit tangential to what the FT focuses on, and you don't have a critical mass to really produce a high quality answer, with better not reply rather than do that. And a lot of effort was spent also on working out how to figure out the time horizon, how to make sure that according to the topic, the chosen time horizon is the right one. And from there, we use as much as possible proprietary technology for text vectorization, for example, because this is commodity nowadays. We don't think it's necessary for us to develop an article vectorizer per se. So we are again using some generally available models, which we are running as a best practice either internally on AWS Bedrock.
So, what other use cases would you like to talk about?
Well, maybe just to mention a few others. Let's see. If I switch to the first page of the FT today and go here to review the article, there's a pop-up here that helps me summarize and translate. So this is just an example of generative AI article transformation. So as you can see, summarization boils down to producing 4 bullet points that convey the key concepts in the article. There's an embedded feedback mechanism here, and we have tested that, and so far the results have been quite positive. So it looks like summarizing content actually leads to people engaging with the articles deeper than without the ability to have the summary. And then another example is the translation feature, where we use Google Translate in order to be able to produce a different language version of the article for people who are non-native English speakers. So those are just a few examples of using generative AI for end-user facing features. There are a number of things we are doing internally for our editorial team, where we are using AI for helping investigations or helping data journalism, or for helping or increasing editorial productivity. So, for example, an editor or a journalist who is working in a specific domain and following a specific topic or industry would need on a daily basis to go and scan through a really dynamic stream of updates that they would be getting from Reuters, Bloomberg, the different sources. And just as an example, one AI-enabled tool that we have produced and now integrated with our content management system is creating those personalized newswires, where different journalists or editors can really easily filter out only those updates from the stream of updates that is relevant to the domain or industry that they are focusing on. So those are just some examples of things we are doing as user-facing and internal-facing tools.
Right. So from an internal-facing tool perspective, if I'm a journalist and I come to get into the office and I sit down on my desk, so what you're saying is that I can see a personalized news feed, for example, like you said. What other tools do I have? Am I able to summarize large, legal documents? Am I able to get headline suggestions? Am I able to get SEO optimized text? Or how much of the script that I actually write or the news story that I write is actually can be AI generated? Do you have some sense of that? Like what tools you use?
Yeah. So first of all, something that I think is worth mentioning is that FT journalism continues to be produced by humans, and this is a very strong belief that we have, and one of our core AI principles. However, we are of course using AI in multiple ways to help editor and journalist productivity. What percentage? It's difficult to answer in percentage, but maybe I can provide visibility into what type of AI-enabled helper tools we have been focusing on. Some of those are related, or many of those are related to article transformation. So editors have a seamless integrated way in their content management system to see those or filter those update streams, those new streams. They can summarize single articles or multiple articles for the sake of themselves doing their research and like preparing for writing an article. They do have the option to get automated headline recommendations, but then there's a human in the loop who is actually looking into the suggestions. And even in initial stages of the article summarization experiment, we had human in the loop reviewing the generated bullet point summaries and actually tweaking them before we were able to advance the technology sufficiently so that we can do that without a human in the loop. So I would say those helper tools are more on the efficiency productivity front. There are also a different set of tools which we are using for story finding. So if you think about really vast amounts of documents, so for example, if we take the ACC as an entity that holds a huge database of financial reports of companies. This is a very interesting source that you can query to understand how certain policies, government policies, are actually being adopted and applied in real life by companies. However, those reports are very unstructured, a huge amount of those, so it's not really trivial to go and identify a trend. And here, for example, to solve this problem, we are using AI in order to bring a bit of structure or to be able to interrogate those documents in this huge amount of documents in a natural language. And we are creating this as a capability that could be applied to other types of documents as well. That's just one example. You can think about geospatial data in a similar way. So for example, if we want to know what change is happening in a region, then that boils down to looking at a time series of satellite images and trying to identify whether a certain object is moving or whether like how a certain location is changing. And we are using AI in order to be able to quickly, efficiently process this and be able to observe certain developments that are of interest.
Nice. And on the subject of again build versus buy, so is your CMS like an internally built CMS which you can then tweak and incorporate these tools, or is it like an off-the-shelf CMS that you need to request a vendor to build these AI tools for you?
Well, maybe again that's a mixture of that depends on the specific use case. Some of those problems are quite mainstream and there are like solutions that are commodity, but some of those aren't. And specifically in investigative journalism, where we want to be, there's this novelty element where we want to check a hypothesis which is not necessarily already shaped as an industry use case, so no ready solutions are available for that one. We would go and internally quickly build a data processing pipeline and then do some machine learning modeling on top of that pipeline in order to test a specific hypothesis. If we see that, like if we are successful in doing that and this really produces an article and we feel that it is transferable to a similar type of problem, or at least at the technology level for a similar type of problem, we would usually go and design the solution in a way that helps us next time when we come across a similar need to not start from scratch.
Thanks. Kristina, it's been an enthralling conversation thus far, and we're really short of time. So I'm going to limit this to one last question for you, which is, in all the time that you spend in the news industry thus far, especially with agentic and AI and ML these days, what's some of the 3 really cool implementations of AI or ML or even agentic AI that you've seen in the past that you'd like to talk about?
Well, that's a great question. Similarly to how we, when we touched on agents, we touched a little bit on the definition of what an agent is. Maybe it makes sense to say what I find cool. So my definition of coolness is more on what's the impact of this, rather than like how interesting the technology itself might be. So if I start from there, like what's the impact, then I would say one of the coolest AI implementations is in fact in investigative journalism. And just to give an example, maybe I can even pull off the article on my screen. Yes, let me pull this article on my screen. One example to give here would be an FT investigation that looked into children that had gone missing in Ukraine, and through applying different AI techniques, some of those children were identified on some Russian adoption sites. So this is just one example of an FT investigation where the application of this technology led to really big changes in certain children's lives. And to me, this is as cool as applying AI in journalism can get. So I would maybe put that as the first one. Just to propose a counter example on that, the FT, of course, has had investigative journalism for years, and one of the most famous investigations for the FT was unpicking the fraud and misconduct which went at pretty high executive levels in Wirecard. There was even a Netflix documentary on this case. You might have seen it. So this was done back in the days when we didn't have such an advanced AI technology so easily at our fingertips. And the investigation still happened, but it really took a huge amount of manual effort to go through emails, leaked documents, to be able to connect the dots in order to come up with the test of the hypothesis at the end, while currently something like this could easily take days or weeks rather than months and months in order to come to the same result. So to me, that's the coolest. Another thing that I can think of is actually how can we use AI to mitigate some of the side effects, negative side effects of using AI. So one of the big concerns in the media industry is that with this advancement of AI, which now puts a really powerful tool in the hands of literally anyone, even people with small budgets and people with not necessarily the best intentions. This has led to an information ecosystem where the spread of misinformation and disinformation is so huge that it brings the level of trust in journalism in general down. It's dragging it down. So something that excites me about AI application is how can we use AI to counter that. More specifically, this means fact verification. This means real-time deepfake detection. This means claim scoring. Basically, using AI to track down misinformation and expose misinformation campaigns, which again has a really big impact on community and societies, especially around critical milestones like elections or like important decisions being made. So that would be the second one. And then maybe the third one would be something that's related to the subscriber experience when staying on top of what's happening in the world and making sense of what's happening in the world. And this is what I would call making technology more humane, or technology adapting to our personal preferences and our lifestyle. So to give an example with myself, I am a very active person. I like to be on the go. I like to be moving. And during those moments when I'm not sitting behind the screen, or not even like being able to read on my mobile phone, I really enjoy consuming content in an audio format. And one of the things that generative AI has enabled any publisher, in fact, any person, has been to take any written piece of content and just automatically and almost free of charge turning it into different types of audio formats. This, of course, applies to video formats and other mediums as well. But the ability to take something which, let's say, is in written form, which wouldn't be necessarily easy to consume, and automatically providing it in a way that makes it really easy, organic to consume, to me means a lot about quality of life and how we can be more authentic in our everyday lifestyle, where technology leans towards us rather than the opposite.
So again, on the build versus buy, so how much of the personalization, like your personalization engine, is kind of in-house, and how much of you kind of off the shelf?
Well, when it comes to personalization, I would say we have pretty strong recommendation models inside that we have built as the FT. And on this end, maybe the balance is more towards in-house currently. This is likely because we have specific knowledge. It's a very creative process of even defining like how and what to personalize. And over time, and this goes way before generative AI, by the way, and it's not built on top of generative AI technology at all. But the FT has had this capability to be using the knowledge that we have about our content and our users, and to turn this into meaningful recommendations, which now with generative technology is starting to span across different mediums, like recommendations not just for articles, but newsletters, offers, products, podcasts, audio formats, etc.
Excellent. Well, Kristina, it's been absolutely a pleasure speaking with you, but we're completely out of time now. So once again, I want to thank you from everyone here for such an enthralling conversation.
It's been a pleasure for me as well. Thank you again for inviting me. And I hope that was useful for your audience.
Thank you so much.